Welcome back, Be Unique, and we're back with another video, and today we're talking about how Walt Disney absolutely, well, not Walt Disney himself, because he's dead. It's not his fault that Disney have destroyed everything. It's not his fault my desk is so cluttered I can't move. But we'll get there. But this video is basically about how Disney fucked up Star Wars forever. Now, we all remember Disney's classic films like Dumbo and The Lion King and Tarzan, Fantasia and all the other shit that they've made, which is not shit, they're very good films, actually. They're actually bloody brilliant, in fact. The Lion King and films like that are absolutely mentally good. But Disney get caught under the same kind of trap that a lot of big name companies get caught under. And that is making and mass producing big name titles just to make as much money as possible. And like I said, I'm trying to stay away from certain things that I've already talked about in this in previous videos, because I have mentioned Walt Disney's greed. Not obviously Walt Disney, like I said himself, he's not here anymore. I have mentioned Disney, the company's greed, in many a video before, but this is a bit of a different kind of take on it, and we're talking about Star Wars in particular. And like I said, back in the day, Disney movies used to be made with heart. The Lion King was made with soul and heart. The Lion King was made with... It's probably my favourite Disney film. It was just made with such passion and desire. The story, the characters, the theme songs... Well, the soundtrack, I should say, absolutely fantastic. James Earl Jones' voice, Jeremy Irons' scar. There's not much more you can want from a movie like this. It's absolutely fantastic. And they've made so many iconic titles, haven't they? There's hundreds of iconic titles. Well, probably not hundreds, but you know what I mean. But Disney, like I said, have made so many fantastic films. They've made some of the best movies you'll ever watch in your entire life. And all of a sudden it changes. And I'll tell you why it effing changes. Because Disney got their hands on things that they should never have been allowed to get their hands on. And like I said, we all know money talks. Money does talk. Not literally. You won't pick up a £10 note and it say, hello. Shit like that doesn't happen. But what I'm saying is, money does talk. It does talk, and people will be persuaded by money. George Lucas was quoted as saying, selling Star Wars would be like selling one of my kids. Then why just sell it for then? You've literally killed us all, George Lucas. You're the real villain here, George, not Disney. I need a breather. But back onto Disney. Look, Disney have destroyed Star Wars. And like I said, George Lucas said, as I just mentioned, selling Star Wars would be like selling one of his own children. So George Lucas is basically willing to sell one of his own kids. I'm not going to make a joke about that, because there's a lot of dark shit that goes on in the world about things like that. So I'm not going to make a joke about specific things like that. Thank you very much. I don't want to get myself cut. Not cut. What did I just say? Cut. I don't want to get my head slashed off by someone. You know what I mean? But basically, the fact that Disney got their hands on Star Wars, I think it's all kind of when it started to go wrong for Disney, because, like I said, Star Wars is iconic. We're going to get onto Star Wars right now. Star Wars is iconic, right? Star Wars is absolutely fantastic. Star Wars is arguably the greatest movie franchise. For me, Star Wars is the most iconic movie franchise of all time, undoubtedly. I don't think there's any doubts. It might not be the best movie franchise of all time in terms of per film, but it is, for me, most certainly the most iconic movie franchise of all time. I believe that. I genuinely believe Star Wars is the most iconic movie franchise of all time. You guys might disagree. You guys might be thinking, what the fuck's this twat on about with the glasses? Absolute scruffy bastard. But I haven't shaved yet, but I am going to at some point. I don't know when. But look, you might think, no, it's not the most iconic. But I think Star Wars is the most iconic movie franchise of all time. And like I said, the originals, the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I've just bit my tongue. Ow, my meat. Are some of the most... They are literally three of the greatest movies of all time. They really, really are. They are so well written, particularly Empire Strikes Back, of course. Fantastic films. The prequels, like we said, are a bit shit. They're a bit tacky. You know, a lot of forced plots. You know, Anakin Skywalker and Padme's love story, for one, is just absolutely... It's sinful. It's awful. You know, the writing of all of those movies, the writing of each and every one of the prequel movies is awful. But again, they do have some fantastic concepts within them. Darth Maul being one, battle droids, destroyer droids, Count Dooku, General Grievous. There's Jar Jar Binks you can F off. But, you know, everything else is fantastic. Everything else for me is fantastic, apart from the plot. So the characters and everything around it is fantastic, but just the in-depth story for those prequels is not great. But you could see what they're trying to do. George Lucas just got a bit caught up in special effects and stuff. George Lucas prioritised the wrong things for the prequels, and hence why they're so kind of shit in a lot of people's eyes. Because George Lucas kind of got sidetracked with things that he shouldn't have while making those films. Honestly, George Lucas thought Jar Jar Binks was going to be the funniest Star Wars character ever. Little did he know that he was going to be so wrong. But like I said, you can see what they're trying to do, and people that compare Disney's modern day saga, The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker with Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, needs their bloody eyes tested and their minds examined thoroughly. They really do, because there is no way that the modern day saga, principally, is as good as the prequels, because they're just made for money. And this is the thing. There's no depth to the characters in any of Disney's Star Wars films. And the big problem is, as well, you've got characters like Rey. And it's all about this kind of sexism stuff. Female empowerment, people. Female empowerment. Rey literally can do everything at the skip of a heartbeat. She knows everything. Whereas Luke Skywalker had to get his ass kicked in The Empire Strikes Back by Darth Vader, and then think, you know what, perhaps I'm not as good as I thought I was. Let's go back into training, and then I'll come back more serious, and then I'll kick Darth Vader's ass. Whereas Rey just thinks, oh, I've picked up a lightsaber for the first time. Where's the most powerful Sith I can find? Oh, there you are. Hello, Kylo Ren, you fucking gay fool. Nothing against gay people, but he just didn't look like a Sith, did he? I'm going to battle you and I'm going to beat you. I've never picked up a lightsaber before, but you know what? I'm stronger than you. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Poor story writing, all this female empowerment stuff as well getting in the way. But like I said, the characters have no depth. They really did not have any quality at all. There's no redeeming qualities about the modern day saga. Honestly, I can't think of anything positive to say about the modern day saga. Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, other than the fact that all three films had eventually had end credits, and I was like, oh yes, brilliant, it's finished. Thank you, God. And like I said, they destroyed Star Wars by bringing the Emperor back as well. Bringing back Chancellor Palpatine was a mistake, but no one cares. A lot of people just actually think, oh, the Emperor's back. Whip, yippee! I was saying whippy then, I was getting ice cream on the brain. But no, they all say, yippee, the Emperor's back, nostalgia rush. It's not, no one really stands there and questions why or how he even got into this movie. Didn't he get his ass blown up at the end of Return of the Jedi in the Death Star, thrown down a gigantic well about 500 feet? How the fuck is the Emperor back in this film? But Disney think you liked him before, you'll like him now. But hang on a minute, how did he get back into this movie? Does that matter? I'm not explaining that to you. Just write the script and carry on. It's kind of like, that is kind of the mentality they kind of went in with, nostalgia. And that was, like I've said many times, they're nostalgia-driven nonsense. A lot of these modern-day movies that get remade or, get a follow-up sequel when it shouldn't have are just nostalgia-driven piles of shite. And that is all they are. They have no depth. They have no quality. They are just purely nostalgia. They are purely nostalgia roller coasters. I don't agree with companies doing backstories for certain characters or side stories. I don't agree with Disney making having a massive rush of TV shows and stuff like that. Just making as much money as possible. Making shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi and stuff like that. I do not care what Obi-Wan was doing during that 20, 30 year period that he was waiting for Luke to grow up. When he was like, it was like, oh, I better keep an eye on Luke while he's with his auntie and uncle. Wait until he grows up so I can teach him the ways of the Force. What was Obi-Wan even doing during that time, actually? That's a good question. Was he just masturbating in a cave somewhere, or was he sharpening his lightsaber? Yeah. No. But look, obviously, Walt Disney are trying to milk this cow as much as they can. They are trying to exhaust Star Wars of its dignity, and that is exactly what they are doing. They are draining the Star Wars name of its dignity and its pride, and it's sinful. It's sinful, and it upsets me. Not to the point where I'm going to cry, but it does upset me, because I love Star Wars, and Walt Disney are just draining every bit of respect that movie's got from it. They really are. They are destroying the Star Wars name. And the best thing is they're doing it with a smile on their face. And of course they are, because they're making shitloads of dollar. If I was making shitloads of money doing it, making Star Wars movies, I'd probably keep making them. So I might sound like a bit of a twatty hypocrite making this video. But look, I'd like to think that if I was in Disney's position, I would not be making add-ons and TV shows of Star Wars, ruining, diminishing the characters' legacies and making films, carrying on a story that shouldn't even really be plausible to actually carry on. Like Force Awakens being immediately after Return of the Jedi, when everything's finished in Return of the Jedi. The Emperor's dead. Everything's, the good guys have won, basically, and everything's back to normal. But yet, Disney come along and say, no, it's not. It's not over. We're going to make another 3 films and pretend that this happened, pretend that this character was here, and pretend that that character existed. It's like, they didn't exist. You're just farting out of thin air to make money, you parasitic bastards. But that's Disney these days. The long respected Disney that used to make all your beloved cartoon movies is long dead. Now they make shit films. Now they're just after money. Now they're just nostalgia-driven parasites that are literally just trying to drain the money fountain of all of its whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But you know what I mean. They're literally just standing at the money fountain, collecting all the dollars, not letting anybody else kind of have any. You know what I mean? They're just greedy. They're basically just greedy, cash-grabbing vultures, and they have destroyed Star Wars. In my view, they have destroyed Star Wars. People can look at the prequels and say George Lucas did a pretty good job of destroying the prequels with some of his choice making, but principally they were a lot better than these ones. George Lucas did make them with a reasonable amount of self-respect and self-pride and pride for the actual Star Wars name. Disney do not have any care about Star Wars and the name and the respectability that goes with that name. They have no care whatsoever. As long as they can fill their pockets with green notes, they will continue to make Star Wars films. That's why you will get, by the time I'm 60, 70 years old, there's going to be another 40 Star Wars films and another probably 700 TV shows coming out. So it is what it is. Me making how long? 14-minute rant about it isn't going to change jack shite. But at least I'm just expressing an opinion. I know I've made similar videos to this prior. This one's a bit different now. This is a bit directed at Disney and directed at one of the most beloved and probably the most iconic movie franchise of all time. So give me your thoughts, guys and girls. Are Disney the vultures that I believe they are? Of course they are. There's no real question in that. But how bad and how destroyed can the legacy of Star Wars become, do you believe? Put it in the comments below. Be unique, and I will see you for another video very, very shortly. Bye-bye for now, guys.